You feel things other people don't even notice. You walk into a room and immediately sense the tension no one else can name. You read between the lines of every text message. You absorb other people's pain like it belongs to you. And for most of your life, you thought that was a gift. But somewhere along the way, something shifted, because the same sensitivity that lets you understand people so deeply also lets you use that understanding. Not always loudly, not always consciously, but it's there. A quiet power you've never fully admitted to yourself. And that admission, the one you've been avoiding, is exactly what this is about. There is a version of empathy that heals, and there is a version that hunts. Most people never talk about the second one, because most people who carry it have convinced themselves they're only the first. You have probably spent years being the one who understood, the one who listened, the one who stayed. You learn to read people the way some people read books, scanning for vulnerabilities, for emotional needs, for the invisible strings that move a person, and you told yourself it was because you cared. Maybe it was. But caring and controlling are not always as far apart as we'd like to believe. This is not about being a villain. This is not about being broken. This is about something much quieter and much harder to face. The person who feels everything and has learned to use that feeling as a compass for something other than love. Let's sit with that for a moment, because before we talk about what this is, we need to talk about where it comes from. Because nothing in the human psyche arrives without reason. Every shadow has a story. Every wound becomes a weapon before it becomes a scar. Think back to the child you were. Not the grown version of you, not the composed version that learned to hold it together. The small version, the one who needed safety and didn't always get it. Maybe the adults around you were emotionally unpredictable. Happy one day, cold the next. You never knew which version of them would walk through the door. So you learned to watch. You learned to read the room before the room read you. You became fluent in the language of mood, in micro-expressions, in the slight tightening of a jaw that meant something was wrong before a single word was spoken. That was survival. That was intelligence. But survival skills don't disappear when the danger does. They become part of how you move through the world. Long after the unpredictable adults are gone, you are still scanning, still reading, still one step ahead of everyone else's emotional weather. And here is where it gets complicated. When you grow up learning that anticipating people's needs keeps you safe, you develop something extraordinary, a near psychic attunement to others. You can sense what someone needs before they say it. You can find the crack in someone's armor without even trying. You can mirror people back to themselves with such precision that they feel understood in a way they've never felt before. That feeling, being truly seen by you, is intoxicating. People lean in, they open up, they trust you faster than they probably should. And here is the part no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes you use that. Sometimes, without fully realizing it, you use the language of empathy to get what you need. Closeness, control, validation, loyalty, power. Not cruelly, not with malice, but with a kind of unconscious precision that is in many ways more potent than cruelty. Because cruelty is visible. What you do is invisible, even to you. This is the psychology underneath what some researchers have started calling the dark empath. And it is not a rare anomaly. It is far more common than we think. It lives in the person who is always the most emotionally attuned in the room, the one everyone else calls deeply caring, the one who gives generously but keeps a quiet ledger, the one who knows exactly how to make someone feel special and exactly how to make them feel the absence of that. It does not always feel like power. Often it feels like love. That is the part that makes it so hard to examine. Let's go deeper. There is a concept in psychology called empathic accuracy. It refers to how well a person can read another person's inner emotional state. Most people have moderate empathic accuracy. They can sense broad emotions but miss the details. A highly empathic person has extraordinary accuracy. They catch the subtle shifts, the hesitation before an answer, the smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Now here is what researchers have found. High empathic accuracy does not automatically lead to compassion. It can lead to compassion, but it can equally lead to strategic sensitivity, using the insight not to help but to position. And the fascinating, disturbing, deeply human thing is this. Most dark empaths are not aware they're doing it. The behavior is not calculated in the way a narcissist or a Machiavellian might calculate. It is intuitive. It lives below the level of conscious decision-making. It is driven by something older and quieter than strategy. It is driven by need, specifically, the need to never be caught off guard, the need to stay one emotional step ahead of everyone else. Because somewhere in your history, being surprised emotionally was dangerous. Being vulnerable was dangerous. Being seen before you could manage how you were seen, that was the most dangerous thing of all. So you learn to be the one who does the seeing. You learn to offer intimacy before anyone could demand it from you. You learn to give people what they needed, so they would never have reason to look at what you actually are underneath. Because underneath, there is a person who is deeply afraid. Not afraid of others necessarily. Afraid of being known. Afraid that if someone truly, fully, without your management and your careful presentation, saw all of you, they would leave. Or worse, they would stay, but they would see you as the frightened, uncertain, sometimes selfish person you have worked so hard not to be. And that fear is ancient. It was installed long before you had the words to name it. This is what makes the dark empath different from other personality types that researchers have studied: the narcissist, the psychopath, the Machiavellian. Those types tend toward lower empathy as a baseline. They do not feel as much. Their manipulation, if that is what we call it, comes from a relative absence of emotional attunement, but you feel everything. Your sensitivity is real. Your pain when others are in pain, that is real too. You are not pretending to care, and that is precisely what makes this so confusing. Both things are true at the same time. You genuinely feel. And you also use what you feel to navigate, to protect, to sometimes control. That is not a paradox reserved for broken people. That is one of the most deeply human things there is. Because all of us, if we are honest, have used love as leverage at some point. All of us have withheld warmth to punish. All of us have made someone feel needed. Not because of them, but because of what that need gave us. The dark empath simply does this with more sophistication and less awareness. Here is the question that matters now, not whether you are this, but what happens inside you when you recognize yourself in these words. Because there are two responses. One is defensiveness, the immediate need to explain, to qualify, to say, but I'm not like that, not really. And if that is your first response, notice it, not with judgment, just notice it, because that response itself is data. The other response is something quieter, a slow exhale, a recognition that feels uncomfortable, and at the same time, like relief. Like finally being seen in the place you thought no one would ever find. That second response is where healing begins, because you cannot transform a pattern you refuse to look at. And you cannot look at a pattern you have built an entire identity around not seeing. For years, the story has been, I am the one who understands, the helper, the healer, the one who loves deeply, and that story is not false. But it is incomplete. The complete story includes the part where you sometimes love with conditions you never speak out loud, where you sometimes give so that you can hold the giving over someone later, where you sometimes choose the emotionally vulnerable person in the room not because you are drawn to their depth, but because their need makes them easier to be close to, safer, less likely to leave. And even that is not a moral failure. It is a wound that found a strategy. Here is what no one ever told the child who learned to read rooms and manage moods and stay one step ahead of emotional danger. They never told that child that it was safe to be slow, that it was safe to not know what someone needed before they knew it themselves, that you were allowed to be surprised, to be seen without preparation, to be loved in your actual state, not your performed one. No one gave you permission to just be without first scanning the room. And so the sensitivity became a skill, and the skill became a shield, and the shield became so familiar that you forgot it was not the same as skin. This is the slow, invisible erosion that happens when a child's natural sensitivity is recruited by survival instead of nurtured by safety. The gift remains, but it bends toward a different purpose. The healing does not come from dismantling your empathy. It does not come from becoming less perceptive, less attuned, less feeling. Those things are not the problem. They are, in fact, the greatest thing about you. The healing comes from learning to use that perception differently, to turn it gently and with enormous patience toward yourself. Because here is the truth that will take a long time to fully land. You have spent so long reading other people that you have almost no practice reading yourself. You know the emotional states of people in your life with startling clarity. But when someone asks what you need, you go quiet, not because you are selfless, because you genuinely do not know. You have been so focused outward for so long that the inward signal is faint. Learning to hear that signal is the work. It is slow. It is uncomfortable in a way that is different from the discomforts you are used to. You are used to emotional complexity in others. Your own simplicity, your own ordinary need for rest or reassurance, or to be held without first managing how that holding happens, that is somehow harder. Start there, not with grand transformation, not with a promise to be different. Start with the question you rarely ask yourself. What do I actually feel right now? Not what is useful to feel, not what is appropriate to present. What is actually moving through me? And then, when the answer comes, even if it is small, even if it is just I am tired or I feel unseen or I am frightened and I do not know why, let it be true without doing anything with it. Just let it be true. Because the person who learned to feel everything for everyone else deserves, finally, to feel something for themselves. You are not dangerous because you feel deeply. You became someone to be careful around when feeling deeply was cut off from its most important direction. Toward yourself, toward honest accountability, toward the terrifying and essential act of letting someone else read you for once, without managing it, without staying one step ahead. That kind of vulnerability is not weakness. For someone like you, it is the bravest thing imaginable. There is a version of your sensitivity that does not hunt, that does not use, that does not protect itself by always being the one who knows most in the room. There is a version of you that lets love be mutual and uncertain and imperfect and real. That version is not far away. It is underneath the scanning, underneath the quiet ledger, underneath the years of being attuned to everyone except yourself. It has been there the whole time, waiting with extraordinary patience to be finally seen by the one person who sees everything you,